and welcome to the Daily Obsession. Today is going to be a bit of a three-piece movie review trilogy, I guess, of two Bong Joon-ho movies and one Gong-Hyo movie, Parasite, Train to Busan, and The Host. Now, these three movies, their connection lies in only that all three of them came from South Korea, but they have been a bit of a series for me because I watched Parasite this year, 2 weeks before the Oscars, which made me very happy that it won, seeing as it was so recent in my memory and I knew how excellent it was. And I decided I wanted to branch out and watch some other Korean films, whether they be horror or suspense, just to see what the difference was and whether the Parasite was just one good film or if South Korea just consistently put out good films. Now, Parasite will be the first one we speak about today. It's a bit of an Alfred Hitchcock thriller that stars the Kim family versus the Park family. The Kim family being a penniless, broke con family versus the Parks, who are very rich. Well, they're a very rich family of a businessman, his wife, and their son. And the Kims start out the film living in a basement, and they slowly but surely inject themselves into the Park's lives, taking their money and their funds, but also learning that there are secrets in the Park household that they may not wish to find. It is a tense, edge of your seat ride. I was thrown around for twist after twist. Each scene is so meticulously crafted to show the cleverness of the Kim family against the rich and powerful Parks. There are definitely laugh out loud moments, while there's also a beautiful undertone of some truly serious ideas that needed to be covered. It managed to be a film that had political motifs while not shoving them in your face and making it feel like that was the point of the film and not the excellent story. The acting in this movie are excellent. The two families, the Kims and the Parks, are played against each other in such a fun and symbolic way that it's hard not to be amazed at the different characters' intertwining arcs. Even as insane as the story is, everyone is so completely believable in their different roles. It's an accomplishment to the highest degree for these actors to have done such an excellent job portraying such different characters while making them feel so uniquely whole and the same. It showed the humanity of both the rich people and the poor people, the different classes, while making sure that you realize where these differences lie in their psychology and how they thought and acted. The effects in this movie were mainly just for setting, so there wasn't obviously any superhero lasers blasting out of nowhere, but they used it to create this beautiful house that was such a tailor-made location for this film to be shot in that it was beautiful. Every single scene worked so well with the different locations. Each piece of the house, every table, every counter was used in a unique and clever way in different scenes. I don't think there was a single room in the house that wasn't utilized to some suspenseful moment. It was truly incredible, one of the best settings I've ever seen in a film. And the way that they balanced that against the Kim's home was incredible. The script of this movie is full of smart, clever, and witty dialogue between the two families, showing how much more clever the Kims are than the Parks, while also showing the power that the Parks have over the Kims. It was well written, it was well planned, every single idea fit perfectly into the film. The music was one of the greatest accomplishments of the movie. It fit so well with every single scene, elevating different parts, while different scores sort of showed how more aloof the Parks felt over the Kims, while also showing the power that the Kims had over the Parks. Some of these scores I have been listening to on repeat since since I watched the film in early February, which is a testament to how excellently they were composed and fit into the movie. It was one of the best films of 2019. It spoke to the class differences that exists in South Korea and the threat of climate change that was coming and the danger of lies that exist. And it definitely deserved the Best Picture win it got and the many nominations it received. Now, the other two films we're speaking of, The Host and Train to Busan, are films of completely different caliber. While Parasite definitely was a thriller and suspenseful, the other two were distinctly horror films. Train to Busan was the one I'm going to be speaking about first. It is easily the best zombie movie I have ever seen in years, but to call it a zombie movie is almost a disservice to the absolute ingenuity that Gong Hu made this film with. Every single scene was incredible. The way that they built this entire movie inside of a train ride from one point to the next was incredible. Every single car of this train felt like an obstacle that they needed to overcome. Each character felt real and alive. The film is about a father who is mainly absent due to his job, who his daughter convinces him to take him to see his wife, his ex-wife, and for her to see her mother. And so they get on this train to Busan, hence the name of the movie. And throughout the movie, they are on this train when a zombie outbreak occurs in South Korea. And one such infected subject climbs onto the train with them, and slowly more and more people become infected, and they try to make their way to the front of the train where it's the safest. And the way they built up their zombies was incredible because a lot of movies take, for example, A Quiet Place or Bird Box, the way they introduce the powers of their enemies, so to say. For instance, the aliens in A Quiet Place are obviously extremely good at hearing, but they're blind. The way they introduce that with the opening scenes is clever, but it's a bit too on the nose, so to speak. It doesn't feel as logical beyond the idea that, well, they just explain it as they're aliens. But the way that they explain everything in Train to Busan, or rather show, because the rule in cinema, show don't tell, is so clever because in each car and each obstacle that they must overcome, they learn a new thing about the zombies by just looking at them and observing them and seeing what they're doing and how they can beat that. It's incredible. The plot itself creates a realistic zombie, which is hard to do. That's the first problem with most zombie films. And it creates a very tense and interesting plot. The acting of all the characters involved is incredible. It's touching, it's heart-wrenching. I've never felt emotional at a zombie movie, but this film just hits all the right notes, and the final few minutes are extremely painful due to the extreme sadness that you will feel for different characters and for different plot points that get, finished up and wrapped up. And the effects in this movie are excellent. I do not know whether they hired contortionists for their zombie actors. I don't know whether they were doing CGI. It was just so well put together. Every single zombie was handcrafted to look as disgusting and horrifying as possible, while also looking realistic in the terms that this was supposed to be a disease outbreak. It was wonderful to watch all these different scenes of crowds of zombies piling over each other like ants. It was very, very well done. It was enjoyable to watch. The zombies, while disgusting, you kept wanting to see more of them, which is something you can't say for most zombie movies. The script itself was very clever in showing the evolving character arc of this absentee father who ends up growing to be the father figure that this daughter wants. She gets the dad she always wanted, who's there and protects her and would sacrifice himself for her if that's what was needed. It was very well written. It was very funny at moments while also remaining heartfelt. It didn't blindside itself by putting in jokes that didn't fit. Each character's arc was complete and perfect. I can't really say anything bad about the dialogue and the script of this movie. The music in this movie, while not really there, you didn't really notice it. That's kind of what they were probably aiming for, because this is more of a visual spectacle of a movie. It's simple, but it keeps everything together. The music is in scenes, and if you listen, you can hear it, but it's not over the top. And then overall, it's just a really, really well constructed film. It's almost perfect for being something that I had not really heard of despite being such a huge fan of the horror scene over the years. I was floored by this movie and I was enthralled from the opening scene to the closing credits, and I highly suggest it. It also has some really great overtones of the political relations between different countries, but that's almost in and of itself a spoiler for the movie, so I'll leave that out. The third film we'll be speaking about is The Host, which is a 2006 film, another one by Bong Joon-ho, who did Parasite. It's a very more politically charged movie than the other two, but that's due to the plot, which is incredible. It's a monster movie about a creature that has grown in the depths of the Han River in South Korea, who is there because American scientists forced Korean scientists to pour old chemicals into the river, basically, which mutated this fish creature to be this humongous, hulking, man-eating fish beast thing. It's a horror film that does not pull any punches, which is something I was very happy about. Oftentimes, American horror is criticized for its slow burn approach due to the fact that if you watch something like a Friday the 13th movie or the Strangers Prey at Night series, it takes forever to get to the part where you're actually seeing the horror. It's not as intertwined with the story as you have to wait through 25 minutes of family struggles to get to the point where a monster or a serial killer comes out and starts attacking, which, not saying that we should be bloodthirsty for the murders, but that's why we're there. We're watching a horror movie. In The Host, the opening scenes showed the family struggles, but it was more intriguing and more realistic than I had seen before. And then, almost immediately, we're introduced to this creature, and it swims back into the waves, and I was like, oh, guess we're not seeing that creature again for another 20 minutes. But then all of a sudden, it just came back out and started attacking people, like the creature would actually do if it existed. And immediately I was all the more invested in this film because it took a more realistic approach despite, the giant fish monster eating people. It's an incredibly good movie. It's very well put together. The plot is very intricate. It feels a bit weirdly timed at points, but it really makes up for it in the other areas of the movie, such as the acting and the effects at points are letting down the movie, but the score and the music covers it. It's a really well put together plot, but obviously it's an early director movie. It's not as polished as you would hope, but that doesn't take away from the rest of the movie. The acting is very, very good. It struggles a bit in the opening because I don't think that it's very easy to recognize what some of the characters are supposed to be and what some of their stories are supposed to do. But once you get about a third of the way into the movie, you're so invested and you realize what all these characters are supposed to be, what all their plots are supposed to be, and it's perfect. It works well. The effects in this movie, in the beginning and the middle, the effects work really well. The creature is well made. It's 2006 this movie was made in, though, so obviously looks a little out of place. But the way that this creature interacts with the main characters and with human actors, it looks really well done. I've seen films in the past couple of years that struggle with that relationship. But in the end battles and such, the creature ends up looking a little off, and some of the effects that they use are very obviously out of style. Let's just put it that way. It doesn't take away from the story too much, but it's still noticeable to a very large extent. The script could have been written a little bit better. It's very clear what the story is overall, but for each of the small things, like for each character, their introductions are not great. Several of the characters I had the complete wrong impression of, and I don't think that helped the film in any way. But it works. It works itself together. Around 3/4 of the way through the movie, you end up with the script all coming together, but not in a way that they were purposely withholding stuff so that it would all come together later. It feels like it just wasn't written as well as it could have been, but it's still better written than a lot of things I've seen, so it's watchable, it's very enjoyable, and overall, it's a really, really good film. It beats down several large horror series that I know. I'm not going to name them, but it's a very good horror film. If you're a fan of them, then I would highly suggest them. Even if you're not a fan of horror, there is a lot of stuff to enjoy for people who just enjoy family movies, which is ironic to say for a rated R horror film, but still, it's got a very nice family touch to it. It's also got a lot of political shade thrown at the US for its activism in the South Korean areas. During World War One, I believe it was, there was a lot of activity there, and even to this day, the US is allies and occupies parts of South Korea, but not many people, well, some people disagreed with that action, and there is a part of the movie which I will not spoil, but that calls back directly to an American intervention in South Korea and Vietnam. So if you're a history buff, you'll definitely see that. But if you're not looking into the history, just know that this film is very much supposed to show some of the wrongdoings of the US actions in the past in the light of a horror film slash monster movie. Now, what did I see different about Korean horror films as opposed to American horror films? I feel that American horror films have really gotten things down to a system. It's really just a buildup of 20 to 25 minutes of you meet a family, they're a nice suburban family, it's a dad, it's a mom, they're having some marital issues, they've got 2 kids, maybe 3 if you have a baby in there for good measure, and then either there's a demon or some sort of spirit that attacks the house, or a monster that attacks the house, or a serial killer, leaving mysterious messages in mirrors and trying to creep them out for 40 minutes before actually trying to do anything. One main character dies, and then the movie is over once they beat the creature, which I never enjoyed. There are some very specific examples where this is done well, and I can enjoy it, but a lot of times it just means that the movie feels flat and fake and boring, and it draws you out of it. You lose your suspension of disbelief very quickly when it's so cookie cutter, these different horror movies. But Korean movies, from the couple I've watched, they are so different from one another. A lot of problems that you see in American horror is that they reuse scenes. You see the same scene in like 9 different movies with a possessed doll sitting in a corner turning its head to see you, and then, oh no, it's gone, and then it appears somewhere else. But in Korean films, despite the fact that several of them cover the same material, they never feel even close to being the same. Every single plot is so different and unique, and they each play out in such different ways where every single character feels like a real person and you get so invested immediately because instead of settling for the same exact character dynamic every time, they use something completely different. In The Host, you have a family of 5 fully grown adults and one child, and the child isn't even there for most of the movie. So it's the relationship of these fully grown men and women who are learning to deal with each other and their past grievances with each other, despite the overarching horror of a giant fish monster eating people. And then you've got Train to Busan, where the story is a father and his daughter, and you've got several side characters, like a man who's about to be a father. His wife is pregnant, and he's trying to figure out how to be the best father he can be. And you've got this CEO of this railway company whose only thing is he wants to get to safety whether or not the rest of the people on the train make it. It's so incredible how different these films are, despite the fact that they all fall under the same genre. I mean, it's so different and unique and amazing that even something like Parasite can still have terrifying moments, despite the fact that it's not a horror film, and something like Train to Busan, despite being a horror film, can have heartbreaking and touching moments that you would never see coming. It mixes genres in such a way that nothing really falls under its one genre. Nothing really falls under its one thing that it has to be. And that's what's incredible. Korean films are not afraid of change. And that is something that is truly incredible. And I cannot wait for the sequel to Train to Busan and to see anything else these directors have to offer in the next years. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe and like on whatever platform you're on. Follow us on YouTube, and I will see you guys next time. Thank